to a new series of videos which will prepare you for your GCSE English Literature exam next year. This half term we will be studying The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Balfour Stevenson. Today is an introductory lesson on the author which lays out some facts about his biography and how he became the writer we know him as today. So, did you ever read a book as a kid that really made you want to go out and explore the world? If so, it very well could have been one of Robert's, a writer who was very much like you at that age. Robert Louis Balfour Stevenson was born in Edinburgh, Scotland on the 13th of November 1850, to a family of lighthouse designers. Like the many children and adults who'd have loved his adventurous and harrowing tales for the past 150 years, Robert wasn't content to just sit on the shore with the lighthouses, though. The soon-to-be literary superstar experienced poor health his entire life, and he spent much of his time as a child in a sick bed, where he would pass that time with books and his own imagination. When Stevenson enrolled in the University of Edinburgh, he was originally studying to become an engineer to follow in the family business of designing lighthouses. However, he quickly discovered, much to his father's disapproval, that this was not the career for him and decided to study law instead. Around that time, Robert also began travelling to France, and by the time he was admitted to the bar in 1875, he had already realised that law wasn't the right fit for him either. Okay, so that was his early life. We'll now have a look at his midlife. Rather than pleading cases, the young adventurer spent the next 4 years following his true passion, which was travel. As he meandered through France and other parts of Europe, Robert met Fanny Osborne, an American with 2 children who had separated from her husband in 1876, and the two developed a close relationship over the coming years. As of 1878, Fanny's divorce was finalised, and Robert set out for yet another new frontier. He not only left for California to be with Fanny, but he also started his journey as a writer with the publication of his first book, An Island Voyage, describing his previous canoe trip on the continent. Robert and Fanny were finally married in 1880, but the coming decade would soon see a return of his health problems to interrupt his wedded bliss. Although he also made trips between the US and Britain during the 1880s, Stevenson also spent a considerable amount of his time bedridden due to bouts of poor health. As when he was younger, though, Robert used this time to let his imagination run wild, and it's during these convalescent periods that he produced some of his most notable works, such as Treasure Island. With the publication of the full volume of Treasure Island in 1884, Stevenson's literary star was on the rise. That means his literary celebrity, so why he became famous. But his health was still very much in decline. Perhaps hoping the warm sea air would improve his condition, Robert bought a boat, and beginning in 1888, the family began a sailing tour of the South Pacific. The Stevensons made stops in Hawaii and several other island chains before they eventually dropped anchor in Upolu, one of the Samoan islands where Robert purchased a 100-acre estate. Despite his great success as a writer and the fulfillment of his lifelong dream of wandering the globe, Stevenson became increasingly depressed and even wished that his many illnesses would just end it all. So we're now into his later life. Sadly, he soon got his wish, and on the 3rd of December 1894, Robert Louis Stevenson collapsed dead from a possible brain hemorrhage. Though his life and career were short, Stevenson's celebrity was almost instantaneous and certainly influential on a number of prominent authors after him. This includes Rudyard Kipling, Ernest Hemingway, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So, this is our summary for today's lesson. The Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson was originally training as a lighthouse designer, but instead he chose a life of adventure as a writer and world traveller. His lifelong obsession with wandering the globe is captured in works like the famous Treasure Island or An End of Travel and A Scotsman's Return from Abroad, which also identifies him as a marker, one who writes poetry in the Scots dialect. With works like these and his novella A Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Stevenson gained worldwide acclaim, until his sudden death on the Samoan island of Upolu in 1894. So these are our key terms. So maker or marker is someone who writes poetry in the Scottish dialect, and a novella is a work of fictional prose typically ranging from 20 to 60,000 words in length. Cool. So that is everything for today. I'm going to post some stuff on some tasks that I would like you to do in response to this video. Good luck with it all. Thank you very much for listening.